What I'm about to read is from The Fall of Gray State. This is a new chapter that I'm working on here, have been working on, and will continue to work on for a little bit. I'm going to read a little bit of this for you here before I play my interview with Catherine Michele, or should I say, she interviewed me and talked about the Gray Stage book. So before I replay that here, I'm just going to read a little bit from a new chapter that I'm working on for most likely part two of the Gray Stage. The rise is almost done. I'm serious. She's coming out to be quite the looker. Can't wait to show you all, but I have to comb her hair for a few more weeks. David Crowley, December 9th, 2014. And so we know the bodies were found on January 17th, 2015. So this is a little more than a month before the bodies are found. And there's a lot of these examples that show us that David Crowley was planning for his future, not planning for his death as late as December. And this is not the last one that he talks about in December of 2014. Remember when I wrote the first book, and I talked to Catherine about this, when I wrote the first book, there was a lot of information that we just did not have. David's day one journal, a lot of things that we had that maybe the Gray State admins did have. Hard to say what they had when, but it's obvious to me that they had a lot of information before we got it in 2018 or so, 2019, whenever it was, maybe even later to past 2020. When we got a lot of the information related to David Crowley's laptop and other things like that, and then just a lot of other information that came out. But this was way back when here. Okay, so this is pretty soon after David's death, and this goes back to something that really stuck out to me. This is a question for the Gray State admins. After the death of David Camillo and Rania Crowley, someone named Martin posted a question directed at the Gray State page administrators. He asked, I raised the question to the administrators, what is your take on Crowley's death? Suicide or probable murder? One of the Gray State page admins quickly responded to Martin's question with, the very extensive and thorough police investigations came to the conclusion that David was the cause of the tragic events that happened. I don't believe that that's technically true. They say that the case is, they don't say that it's closed, and they can never prove that David Crowley did this. So it's a very misleading statement that they are giving to one of David Crowley's fans, supporters of the Gray State Project here. And then it's also curious, like I've always said, it's also curious that these guys still feel like it's cool to just move on with the Gray State Project after David Crowley dies and accusing him of all of these things. It's some pretty sick stuff to me. It's very, very sick. It's not something you would do. If this guy was a murderer, a child killer, you would probably not want any of his content out there. You would not want to present him in a positive light. And so they kind of want to have it both ways. So here is what they say. And this must have been like maybe a week or so after. I have to go back and really see exactly when. But they go on to say, it's you can believe if you want to or not that the police investigation, that they came to the conclusion that David did this. Their conclusion that David did it is because they couldn't find any evidence that anyone else did. But then it goes back to the question we've been asking for years, did they even look? And I can't really find any evidence that the investigators looked at anybody else, began to look at anybody else. I should take that back. I have found a few hints that they may have been looking at other people, but not that much. And I don't believe they were seriously looking at anybody else other than David Crowley from the start. And they've made that clear by the fact that within 24 hours, they were already accusing David. And that could have been to throw somebody off. If they were looking for other people, that could have been to throw them off. So they would slip up. And we did see a lot of strange things that happened after David Crowley's death. So here's what the admins go back and tell Martin. And well, here's what I say in the chapter here. Even so, Gray State Facebook page admins didn't see the need to shut down a Facebook page associated with an alleged murder and child killer. The admin went on to comment, "It's heartbreaking and hard to totally comprehend still. They were like family, as close friends tend to be. But were they really close friends, especially towards the end of David's life?" Some people don't want to believe that, the Gray State page admin continued. Even those that didn't know the Crowleys, or us for the most part, never even heard of Gray State before 2015. Now, I first heard of Gray State back in 2012 when the first Gray State trailer came out, but I was never a fan. Still, they're right about one thing. Some people like me do not believe the alleged, very extensive and thorough police investigations proves David is guilty. The Gray State page admin was quick to generalize what they believe some people had concluded about the alleged double murder suicide. Martin asked a sincere question, and look at how the admin responded. They just want to come up with every conspiracy theory out there, the Gray State page admin continued. Point fingers in every other direction away from the facts, and instead of facing those facts, only focus on speculation so it fits with their ideas and theories. Now, I would argue it is the Gray State goons who pointed fingers in every other direction away from the facts. The Gray State team and admins have never provided facts to support their assumption that David is guilty of a double murder suicide. They simply piggyback off what the police say, who also have never proved David was a killer. Perhaps the strongest evidence proving David's innocence stems from the extensive and thorough police investigations. I truly believe that. The extensive and thorough police investigations, the BCA, everybody that is involved, to me, proves that David Crowley is innocent. It is the strongest proof, all in their documents. That all of that proves to me that David Crowley is innocent, because none of it really points to David committing a crime. It really doesn't. It points the other way to me. I don't know. It kind of exonerates him, but whatever. The lengthy response from the Gray State page admin goes on to say, so while people can spend all the time they want trying to figure out what the nefarious and heinous plan by the New World Order was, the fact of the matter is that the only nefarious and heinous plan was that of David's. Now here they accuse David of having a nefarious and heinous plan to kill his wife, 5-year-old daughter, and himself. They also indirectly insinuate that David left his dog to starve to death or feast on the flesh of certain parts of 3 deceased bodies while drinking from 2 toilets in order to survive alone in a house for 3 weeks. Now, is that what close friends tend to do? Nice friends. The Gray State page admin also tried to play the victim when answering Martin's question, claiming to be concerned about David's friends and family that are still here and how they will be left asking why for the rest of their lives. Many of us are asking why. Why did this happen? We're also asking, why would anyone assume David is guilty? Even some of those people who have never heard of Gray State before 2015 could ask the same question. Family members were asking why. Friends were asking why. Fans were asking why. And military soldiers were asking why. People who care about a child being killed were asking why. And anyone who knew about the case was probably asking why. People who look into suspicious cases may still be asking why. Anyone influenced by David's work is probably still asking why. I find it interesting that the Gray State page admin focused on the why. Shouldn't the admins be just as concerned about how David is guilty? Focusing on why David did this assumes David is guilty and ignores evidence to the contrary. You don't need to ask why for the rest of your life unless you want to play the victim for the rest of your life. You can easily look at the facts and go where the evidence leads you. The admin went on to respond, we put many years into this with David as partners, and thousands of people want to see this project still happen. So again, we're back to discussing how the Gray State team, who David was distancing himself from, can continue to make a movie created by someone they accuse of killing a child. This really is the fall of Gray State to me, all of this. The person posting as the Gray State seems delusional to me. Who would want to see the project of a murderer move forward? It makes sense to me that people who think David is innocent would want to see the Gray State film succeed. Why would those who believe David is guilty want this project to come to fruition? Aren't they concerned about how that would affect the family and friends who will ask themselves why for the rest of their lives? That seems selfish to me. To be clear, those in control of the Gray State social media accounts are still using David and his creation for their own purposes. But we put many years into this, the Gray State admin wanted Martin to know. Regardless of what David may have been saying in the months leading up to the tragedy, he was never alone on working on Gray State. There are plenty of videos and interviews out there that show that. Reading the above comment made me wonder if the person posting as the Gray State admin was Danny August Mason. There are a few reasons why I believe that was the case. One reason was because the admin felt the need to remind people that David wasn't working on the project alone, regardless of what David may have been saying in the months leading up to the tragedy. That's a pretty damning statement there. So they are recognizing here that even David was saying that he was working on this project in the last months of his life alone, not with these other guys. But they still want that credit, and they still want to take this project and try to do something with it, and they will, as we've seen. We continue reading on a little bit more. What David was saying about building a new team in the months leading up to his death is well documented in David's social media posts, private messages to peers, and in his day one journal. It's interesting, the admin makes a point to let people know David was not working on the project alone, and that other people had put years into the Gray State. This is more evidence the Gray State admins were aware David was distancing himself from some of them in the months leading up to the deaths. That included Danny Mason. David wanted Danny Mason to sign a certificate of employment and release agreement. I'll read that again. David wanted Danny Mason to sign a certificate of employment and release agreement form, which was predated August 1st, 2014. Danny Mason never signed the form, but he responded to David's request with some demands of his own. In that email, dated September 26, 2014, Danny Mason mentioned his contributions to the project over the last 4 years. I cannot sign the agreement, as in for a handful of reasons, Danny Mason wrote to David, but most importantly, because I have dedicated 4 years to Gray State. I have been intimately involved in the creating, casting, development, production, and marketing of the project to this point. Danny Mason believed he was rightfully entitled to 10% of the gross revenue of whatever may be generated from Gray State moving forward. I still don't understand why he would demand 10% of the Gray State project in September 2014 and then tell police he was just an actor when being questioned about David's death in the first month of 2015. Did Danny Mason forget he was more than an actor when speaking to police, or did he knowingly lie? The second thing that stuck out in the comment was the use of the word tragedy. While Danny Mason wasn't the only one to use that word or phrase, Mason Hendricks once commented that the deaths were tragic but poetic. Danny Mason had used that word when being interviewed by Ben Swann days after the bodies were found on January 23, 2015. During that interview, Danny Mason was asked to comment on if David had PTSD or not. To the best of my knowledge, asked Ben Swann, to the best of your knowledge, asked Ben Swann, had David exhibited any symptoms or signs of PTSD in the years that you've known him? Nothing that would, I guess, constructually fit the bill for a diagnosis of PTSD, answered Mr. Mason. Not in the form with David, and that could have been masked with his creativity, but nothing to the extent that immediately he flipped out and kind of lost his mind. That diagnosis to explain the tragic events just doesn't fit. We can only assume leading up to it, to the tragic event. We can only assume. There you go. We know for sure Danny Mason was an admin for the Gray State social media platforms. I cannot say for sure it is Danny Mason responding to Martin's question, but that is my assumption. Perhaps it doesn't matter to some people as much as it does to me. Some people may question why the admins of the Gray State social media accounts believe David is guilty. I'm one of those people who question their beliefs regarding this case, and I stand by those questions. Do these Gray State admins stand by their belief that David is guilty of a double murder suicide? If so, what is their belief based on? I ask the question because I have not seen them provide evidence of David's guilt. Even in the admin's lengthy response to Martin, even in the admin's lengthy response to Martin's 17-word question, no facts supporting the allegations against David are given. So we will continue. The admin continued. So we will continue. The admin continued. That's kind of weird. So we will continue and we'll do our best to make Gray State become something we feel the fans will love and appreciate. You know what I think the fans would love and appreciate? I'm just speculating here. But I assume the fans would love and appreciate it if those who assumed control of the Gray State project would stand for David and stand by the facts of this tragic event. Committing suicide is one of the worst things a person could do, except for murder. To be accused of both and to have people who have worked with you for several years buy into the accusation within days of your death is a very tragic event. Perhaps David was right when he said death was not the worst thing someone could do to you. Here we have people going along with the assumption David is guilty within days of his body being discovered, and then wanting to move forward with his project. None of this makes sense to me. Martin asks a simple question, and once again, the Gray State goons fail to provide a simple and articulate answer. Even so, Martin thanked them for their thorough answer. Martin believes the timing of the deaths were very suspicious. He ended by asking if the police report was made public and who is administering this site now and pushing forward the movie. There was no public response I'm aware of, though I know for sure Danny August Mason and Sean Wright are admins of the Gray State pages and have access to the Gray State YouTube channel.
And here we are. Hello, everyone. I decided that I would do a whole new section on here because the Crowley case, it seems to be winding down, although we're not walking away. So I decided I would start reviewing books. I read a lot of books. And so I sat there and I thought about it. And I really think the perfect way to segue into this whole new section is to invite Greg on. And thank you so much, Greg, for joining. He's not feeling so good today, so really double thank you.
No problem.
To go over his book, The Gray Stage, because as you know, that has to do with the Crowley case. And I would really like to hear from Greg's own mouth what got him started, why he decided to write the book, how he heard about this. And I know he has said this multiple times, but just in case there are any new viewers, we want it to come straight from the horse's mouth. So Greg, again, thank you so much for being here. And I'm sorry you don't feel well.
That's okay. Always happy to be here, especially to talk about this case. Such a very unusual case. And when I first started looking into this, I did not plan on writing a book. I think one of the only reasons that I did is because we had done so much research, there was so much information out there. And I felt like it wasn't really getting the mainstream attention, or there were so many things that were being twisted. There were so many different views on this, even among all of us great people. And I thought, you know what, I really want to try to take as much of just the factual data about the case and try to put it into one small, concise book. The book is about 200 pages, if that, I think. And that's if you count, the title pages for each chapter. if you count sources, et cetera, et cetera, if you count all of that, it's probably still about 200
204.
all right,
Yeah,
204.
yeah,
Yeah.
it's not very long.
And that's big print. It's probably 13. The text, I forget what the font is, but it looks like 12 or 13 maybe, just by glancing at it. It's been so long that I
Yeah,
don't
it
even know
probably
what it is.
it's a little larger than
It's a little
12.
large. Yeah,
But that's okay because it's easy to read. Easier to read.
easier to read.
So yeah, I
But it was,
liked the font. So
yeah, no, and I felt like, we needed to have some type of a book out there. We were hitting them with everything. And so the book came along, which then inspired the Gray Stage podcast. And then I don't know if I had the website up at that point, but it was really for the new researchers, because we're still seeing new researchers. I have 3 David Crowley channels, and we're still seeing new people that come on to and have never heard about this case, or have just heard somebody mentioned it. So they go and they look for more research. Well, I don't want them to go and just find what the mainstream news media says, what the propaganda says about this. I want them to actually be able to find all of the raw data and look at it and decide for themselves and have it all in one place without my own views and everything. And that was a big challenge with this book, was trying to keep my own thoughts and my own views out of it as much as possible. Hey there, Iconic. How are you?
and
I'm good.
I do have to say I do have to say that that was one of the things that impressed me about you from the beginning. As you know, I'm like a bull in a china shop. There's nothing delicate about the way I approach or say things. And I
I
know
like
that
it.
about myself.
Yeah.
It gets me in so much trouble. And I'm one of those where I speak first and I'll apologize later because oftentimes I'm wrong. And I have, it's like, okay, so and when you started saying, hey, it used to frustrate me because that's my personality. But you're like, okay, what's the source? Where's their source? Where did you read that? And I would sit there and go, well, how can you not know? It's in the reports. And you're like, where? Where in the reports? So you really forced me to focus more on what is actually there and not, because even though I may have been citing a source, if it's not really, like this page, that document, whatever, it's really just an opinion. And so thank you. I mean, you really helped me to learn to focus in on what really matters. And that's what I really, really like about this book. For those of you who have not seen it, this is Greg's book.
You
And
got a few sticky notes there too.
I do. and and it's highlighted in a
And
lot
it's highlighted. Wow.
of it's called The Gray Stage by Greg Fernandez Jr. And I will I forgot to do that. I will put the link where they can get this book. You'll send me the link and then I'll put it in the description.
Absolutely.
But how long and when did you decide to actually start writing this book, and how long did it take you?
It must have been about 2018, I think. And I think it was after Eric Nelson's film came out. I think that's what really kind of got me going. It may have been before that, but it was probably 2018. At the earliest, 2017 is when I started thinking maybe I'll write a book. I was still working on my first book, and so I was I had learned a lot from writing that first book. It was just a nightmare, and I went over it the other day, and it's like it's still kind of a cluster in some ways, but everything that I learned, it really helped me write this book pretty fast. I mean, I published it at the end of 2019. So I probably spent about a year, I would say, about a year actually writing it and then rewriting it. And the good thing was that the research was already done, because I already had all of these, just like all of us, these big notepads, notebooks of all this notes and all the things that I felt were relevant. So when people would ask me about this in our Facebook group, I would have the references, and so I would be able to quickly come up with it. And then I thought, well, wait a minute, if I just write a book, if I take all the stuff that I've already handwritten, why not just put that into one book? And then I can go back if somebody asks me, which is what I do now. I go back to my own book. What'll happen sometimes is I'll get
people will actually ask me things that are in my book, and I'm like, where did you hear that? Go back. Oh, it's in your book. Okay, well, and so I would say it took me about a year to write it, and it was published at the end of 2019 because the podcast started pretty quickly after that.
Yeah, and I mean, I sit here and I look at a lot of the stuff that you've included in here and how much we've learned since you've published this book.
Very
But
true.
what I mean, what I like is how you. I know we'll talk about this in a bit, but your section called the gray shame.
Mm,
And you don't just go over the documents of the court case, you actually bring in and talk about all of the other people that were invested or part of the Gray State movie, and whether it was training or acting or whatever.
hmm
I think that the title of that, the gray shame, is so perfect because it turns out that the behavior of so many was so shameful. So what were you thinking when you decided to call it the gray shame?
Yeah, so that's interesting that you bring that up because before I started writing the books, I would publish just these small little blurbs about different things that were happening, trying to document, because there were people that were going and they would look up what is going on with the David Crowley case. So on my website, which is probably thegraystage.wordpress.com, that's what it was. If you go to thegraystage.com, it'll take you there too. But so I had been writing all of these small little stories about just things as they were happening, things that I thought were relevant that people needed to know. And so most of that chapter, The Gray Shame, is just a kind of like a redo of all of those small little blurbs that I had written, and I took them all and I put them into one spot. And the goal was to make it a timeline. This is kind of my version of a timeline there, and sometimes it jumps around, but for the most part, that chapter should be a timeline starting with David Crowley meeting his wife and then going into the whole to really to the last year of their life is really the basis of it. And it was called The Gray Shame because of the conversations that I had with David Crowley's friends and how shameful that I thought that it really was of what they were saying about David Crowley, how quickly they were saying it, and then how they were going after people who disagreed with it too. And there were so many shameful things, how the police acted, how the police responded, how they missed bullets, and a lot of the jumping to conclusions on this when such a tragic story with a 5-year-old child, uh, all under the age, all three of them, obviously the two parents, are all under the age of 30. And they had everything going for them. They were making a big name for themselves, and they were going to do something. I think they were going to do something really, really special. I think they did. I think in 2012 they really did something special that I didn't gravitate to at that time, but there was a lot of people that did. And so I really wanted to kind of document that journey because we kept hearing David turned to the dark side basically, and all of a sudden, this he snapped. Then there were other people that thought no, he had planned this out. Then we had the theory that it was David Crowley and his wife had planned this out, and they had planned on doing this, and that was the thing. So none of this to me made sense. And instead of me just kind of writing up what I thought about what these people said, I said, well, I'm just going to document it all. It's already documented. All I have to do is take all of that data and put it into one place. And the main thing for that chapter was to make sure that I put it in there before it got taken off of Facebook. And even now, some of the stuff that's in there from what these people say, you probably can't find it. And the things, if you can find it, even the Justice for David Crowley family group, you got to go back years in order to find it, which, Facebook is okay about, searching. But so I wanted to make it really easy for people so that they could say, well, wait a minute, where did he get this from? Why is he saying this? Where is this quote? Is this a real quote? And so it was crucial for me to have that, and the only way to do it was to write it in a timeline, in some type of a timeline. Unfortunately, I did not have the day one journal. If I would have, it may have taken me another year to actually write that book. And even going back and looking with the day one journal, I could do a very different chapter, right? Not a different chapter, but I could add a lot more to it. One thing that I was really happy with is that even after everything that we did know, that we did find out after 2019, it really wouldn't have changed anything that I put in the book. There's definitely things that should be added to it that I would love to go back and maybe add at some point. But I never felt like, there were some things that I should have changed. One of the two things that I probably would change, I believe, is sometimes I would say DNA when it was blood, or I would call it blood, but it wasn't specific to where it said blood. And I think you had helped me correct some of those things that I had gotten wrong, where sometimes I would say blood, but it could be the DNA. So
Touch
some of
DNA,
those
yeah.
things. Yeah. So I think that, those are some of the things that I would go back and maybe change. I think I may have found doing the podcast really helped too, because I was able to go back and find a couple of typos or a couple of things that just like, this sentence doesn't really, I need to rework this sentence or something like that. But I think for the most part, that was the most challenging chapter. That's the biggest chapter of the whole book. It's about 25 pages. It's my favorite chapter. And it brings it all back full circle, because the book starts with us going into the house with the cops. We're right there with them. We're looking at what they look at. We're seeing what they see there. Because I want people to ask themselves, are you seeing what they're seeing? Because they're saying within 24 hours, David Crowley is guilty. Boom, case solved, basically.
Mm-hmm.
And so when you read this book, when you read those first chapters, are you seeing that? Or are you seeing what maybe what we're seeing is there's no need to rush to that conclusion here. And really, there's no evidence that David Crowley did this. So
Right. And one of the theories, which, I took notes, that was real popular, especially among the police, is that, especially when the Allahu Akbar was written on the wall, that was David making a jab. That's what the police chief was saying. Oh, he's just making a last jab at his wife. Now, how and why he said that, I mean, David never once said one disparaging word toward his wife, not toward her culture. And in fact, when he was over there, he refused to fight and kill them.
right.
And so he took a very menial job, because he's like, I'm done. I'm laying down my arms. But yet they're like, oh yeah, this is what he did. And he was this right wing. What do they call that? What do they call that? What's the word? I lost the term.
Right wing,
Like a conspiracist or something.
conspiracy theory. There's a different term, I think, that came out after he died. Obviously, there was a few terms he got labeled with that.
Yeah.
Like, that term it wasn't even a term when he was here in 2014. Right? So
and yet you say on page 157, and it's the gray shame chapter, where you quote David saying, so for those of you, hopefully you guys have okay ears, because it says a bad word, but this is David's words that Greg is quoting from. It says, then on March 11th, David asked the question, you know what liberty feels like? Unsubscribing from hundreds of liberty or death fuck the NWO pages and Twitter accounts. Now, if he was so right wing, and if he was so into conspiracy theories, why was he unsubscribing from hundreds of pages of those?
mm-hmm.
And a lot of what I gather, again, never met the man, don't know him, but doing research and following him, I can imagine that he probably subscribed to a lot of these because he was needing research and information for the movie. And the fact that he starts unsubscribing, and that was in May. Oh no, March 11th. And the murders didn't occur until, January the next year. He's already unsubscribing. So almost an entire year before the murders take place, he is separating himself from the quote unquote conspiracies. Now, if you hadn't written that in there, I wouldn't have known, because I wasn't going around, looking up all of the stuff that he wrote. And you did a lot of tracking his Facebook accounts and writing it down. And again, it's in the book. And to me, that was like that really stuck out. And yet
Yeah.
the police never paid attention.
No, no, they should have, and for whatever reason they didn't. Now we were told that, yeah, there was a lot of strange things happening. Hey there, my friend, how are you? A lot of strange things happening in that last year, which is true, but they were spinning it, and that's what you'll often find. It's like, well, David was he was distancing himself. They want us to believe he was distancing himself because he was planning this, because he was going crazy, because he was doing drugs and doing all this crazy stuff, going down all these, looking into these crazy conspiracies, et cetera, et cetera. But it turns out he was distancing himself from certain people for very specific reasons. And it wasn't everyone. That's the other thing. They want us to believe that it was everyone. No, it was certain people. And a lot of these people just happened to be the same ones that after he died came out and said that he was guilty without any proof. And we're just so quick to say that David did this. I'm like, no wonder this guy was distancing himself from these shameful people, because everything that they did was just full of shame. And if David wanted to make money, he wouldn't have been unsubscribing from all of those pages, from all of those people, because those are some very powerful people in the quote unquote alternative truth groups. Alex Jones, once he put out there some bad things about Alex Jones, he's separating himself from a lot of Alex Jones fans. Alex Jones had a lot more fans probably back then than he may now, but Alex Jones, it was a big deal. It still is a big deal. So for David Crowley to do that, as at the same time he's trying to get his project into the right hands, Alex Jones could have easily helped him.
Yep.
But for whatever reason, just like many people that I know, David Crowley smelled something foul about Alex Jones. And unlike a lot of people that I know, he actually called him out on it. That does not help David Crowley. That does not help his project. That's not going to help him make money at that time. It may now, because of some things that has happened with Alex Jones, but at that time, to speak out against Alex Jones back in 2012, 2013, after Alex Jones just had him on to talk about his projects and had been a strong supporter of David Crowley. Alex Jones was in David Crowley's the documentary version, Gray State: The Rise. So he's in there. And so to me, that was a big deal that David Crowley is going to go so far and say that Dave pretty much call Alex Jones out for being all about the money, and that David Crowley did not want to go down that path. That was a big deal. And there were a lot of other people, and probably a lot of private conversations from people that were like, you should not have done that. You're hurting our chances. This isn't just about you. We were part of the Gray State Project too. This is our project too. So I think it kind of, that to me is like a line being drawn there. And I didn't focus on that in the book. I didn't want to put my own opinions, my own thoughts, because I knew there would always be time to go back over that and cover that. And but it was a big deal for me, and it's a couple sentences, but for me that was a huge thing that stuck out, is what David Crowley was doing, distancing himself from these NWO or these anti-NWO groups. I thought was just a fascinating part of this whole story.
Yeah, because his whole focus on Gray State really kind of was around the NWO and the government and how crazy it was. And then once he had that done and he had that deal with Hollywood, then all of a sudden he's like, okay, I'm backing off now. And he really wanted to focus on other things. He's like, I want this done. I'm so over this.
Yeah.
And he really wanted to move on because he had other ideas, which really, again, by reading the book, we see you do very well in putting out there all of, not just what the police say they found, but the other facts that you found in the other various, forms of social media, which oftentimes, if not all the time, goes against what the police were saying in their reports, and even what those who were associated with him were saying. It's like on one hand they would go on TV and go, oh yeah, he really loved his wife, we never saw any problems, blah blah blah, or vice versa. Maybe they said it in their police statement. But on one hand, they're saying really good things about David. And the next thing you know, they're like, well, yeah, he just snapped and killed everybody.
Right.
Well, what is it? Make up your mind.
Right. Yeah, there's and none of their stories really matched either. The stories always change here. At least this is good. The 3Ds: deflect, distract, and divide. Yeah. And we it's like this program, and you see it all in this case, and by the same strange cast of characters who all had, who wanted to be part of this, who wanted to be part of David Crowley's project. And then you have David Crowley separating himself from them, distancing, and they don't want to talk about the facts. Everything that is in this book is probably stuff that the Gray State goons are not going to tell the Gray State fans. So it is really the other side. And so when the Gray State goons would go and say Dan and Greg are crazy, the Justice for David Crowley group is crazy, and for the people that would say, well, you know what, let me see what they have to say. And so for those people that read this book, and that's another reason why I wanted to make it free, to make it out there, to make it as easily accessible as possible. And so to me, that really left the door open to say, there is an alternative here. And it's crazy that, people that have no association with David, no reason to back this guy up, in some cases like me, did not like David Crowley's work. And here we are defending him against his friends, his family, people that were working with him, that would go out on shoots, that had a real relationship with David Crowley, and we're defending David Crowley. And so people be like, well, if that's what they say, then they must be right because they were with David. They know better than you, et cetera, et cetera. But we've given you many different reasons why I don't care how close these people were with David. They should know better. They should know exactly what we put in this book. Now, if they want to say that what is in the book is wrong, they can definitely do that. And but I would love to hear, what did I get in this book that is wrong?
Well, I mean, they would be,
it.
it's like, good luck, because everything that's in here that I'm looking, you were quoting exactly. And those who have read the police reports, the minute you start looking at this, you're like, okay, yeah, that's the police report. I can probably even tell you, is that the 94 page document or the 485? I mean, because we have read these so much, we can go, oh yeah, I know where that is. Wait, that's his journal. Wait, this is this. And, I find it interesting, just like you said, too. It's like the people who say that they loved him are the ones who are throwing him under the bus for their financial gain.
Right.
All of these people who say he was so crazy and this film drove him over the edge are the same ones that are now trying to steal the profits from what they think they can glean from his work.
Right.
And it's like, whoa. And I like the fact that this book really brings to light all of, the hidden agendas of everybody, not just the people involved in Gray State, but it seems like the police department as well. And I don't understand it. It's like, you read through all of this stuff and you're looking at these documents, and let me find, I just went through a really good page here. Where you were including a lot of information from, yeah, like these pages where Greg is showing this is coming from the police reports. And when you're looking at this and you realize it doesn't match, nothing matches. The scene doesn't match what the police say. The scene doesn't match what the people say. And I don't understand. I guess I'm confused why there's not a bigger uproar, but maybe it's because, like you said, not enough people really know about it. I mean, I never heard of him until just by chance Richie from Boston happened to me. I just turned on a Richie from Boston video. I was bored one day and he mentioned David Crowley and I'm like, what the heck is this? And then which led me to you guys' group. Well, no, led me to the Netflix movie. And then when I saw that, I started researching going, oh no, something's not right here. And then I found you guys' group. And then from the rest is history. And so when you did this book, I'm like, whoa, this is very, very helpful.
Yeah, and I'm glad. I'm glad that it is. It's that's all it's supposed to be. It's just supposed to be the other side. And for the people who have not yet gone through all of those documents and everything, this is just kind of like a brief summary, a brief summary, because there's a lot to go through. There's a lot that did not get into the book, a lot that did not make it into the book. And that's even back in 2019. I had ripped a lot of stuff from this book because I really wanted to get it down just to the bare bones, which is something I tried to do with my first book. And the book kind of came out a little bland. I thought it wasn't, I don't know, it just didn't flow the way that this book, I feel like this book just really flows. And I think that's because of how much research that I spent on it all of those years from 2015, to 2017, and then getting into 2018. It's like, how could I not write a book? I have all of this data here. I enjoy writing. I think that the information is relevant, and I feel like a lot of it people were just not, they didn't have access to, they didn't know where to go, and they were also being told a bunch of lies by people who wanted us to believe that David Crowley was guilty. And for those people, I mean, even back in 2015, there were a lot of people that understood, a lot of Gray State fans that understood, no, this is wrong. You guys are making a mockery of David Crowley.
Yeah. And so what was your biggest surprise, if anything, in your research for this book? What were you surprised by the most?
It probably the DNA. Because I expected a lot more. The fact that they could not tie David Crowley to the blood writing was a big deal, because that's all that you ever hear. Oh, David wrote it. Based on what? What evidence do they have? Just because it was his home? Well, maybe it was his wife. Well, obviously that doesn't really make sense either, because she's, I don't know, there's just so many reasons why that doesn't make sense.
Yeah, because his DNA was not in any of the samples taken.
Right.
At all.
Right.
You're right. And that's what surprised me was, the lack of DNA. They couldn't even tie him to the weapon. The only DNA evidence they have on that weapon from David is his blood on the magazine.
Right.
And it's like, how did his blood get on the magazine?
Right.
It doesn't happen that way. So yeah, it's like, whoa, if you can't even tie him to that trigger and you can't get his prints and nothing, but yet you're saying he did this, and his DNA where he lives in that house is not there. It wasn't on the cell phone. His own personal cell phone with Kamel's blood was only Kamel's DNA. He wasn't even on there. And we all know how much we handle cell phones. Every time we touch our cell phones, we're leaving DNA. And his cell phone didn't have any of his own personal DNA. So yeah, I think you're right. I think that is a big one. It's like, whoa.
Yeah, and some of the stuff that they just did not test, they just didn't even do those tests. But I mean, if you just look at what the tests that they did, you would expect that those DNA results would be what led them to say, okay, we got the proof here. This is why David Crowley did it. His DNA is here. His DNA is all over. His DNA, if his DNA is not tied to the blood writing, why are we supposed to just believe that David Crowley wrote that? And all the media and these gray state goons, they just ran with it, whether they got tricked, whether they got duped, or if they just didn't care. I don't know, but for whatever reason, they just ran with it, and that's not right.
No,
That's
and
not fair.
like Iconic saying, he's saying, "Uh-oh, back to paleo." And yeah, exactly. They try to tell you in their reports. Now, this is not hearsay.
Yeah.
In reports and in interviews, the police will say that paleo somehow got rid of the blood. Now, this dog was very specific. There's no blood from the little girl. There is no blood from David other than what is on the inside of the gun on the magazine. Yet Kamel's blood is everywhere. So the dog picked and choose. I'm just going to eat. I'm just going to lick up all David's blood. I'm just going to lick up Ranya's blood and do that, and then I'm just going to leave Kamel. No, it's like, but they don't stop to think about that and think rationally.
Yeah, and I believe we had a lot of trolls and a lot of people that were purposely sent there to create wild and crazy theories to use those to counter. So instead of focusing to counter what we're saying, they would come in there and they would create these crazy stuff that they would then counter. Or if somebody asked them a relevant question, hey, Greg said this or Catherine said this, they would bring it back to, well, these crazy people have also said this other stuff. They would deflect pretty much. And we saw that so much. It was crazy. It was crazy. Some of those tactics that were used. And it's like, that was another reason that led me to think there's more to this than just, what they say happened.
Yeah. And, I think about, like you said, it's like, if you had added like the Blacklight report and the journal and everything, I mean, this book would have been like so thick. Because the day one journal proves beyond a shadow of a doubt someone else was accessing their computer from the outside. It shows in there that it was accessed on January 14th. So no matter, I still believe they died in January. People believe they died in December. Regardless, they were still deceased on January 14th. Yet it states the root drive was accessed on January 14th.
Yeah. And
that means somebody was in there.
Yeah, one of the strange things that I also found about and I'm sure not just me, but I think one of the strange things that we know about the Day One Journal is this goes back to some things that were happening where they could not get their dates right. The information by the investigators weren't really lining up with what some of the other investigators said. And here we have one very clear case where the investigators are telling us that the Day One Journal ended on a certain day. And then we get the journal and it ended later. So, I mean, there's things like that really kind of make you question, how is that possible? Why would the investigators say that? Did they have a different version? Then later they got another version of it. Is the version that we have one that the police don't have? There's just so many different questions like that. I don't believe that's true because it ended up coming from them. But at first, when this all got leaked by Tony Floyd, it was just like, wow, this is all stuff that we had been asking for. I still don't understand why they wouldn't release that to us. I mean, I guess the only thing that I can think of is that they wanted that secret knowledge to keep tricking people to say, well, these guys, David or Greg and Catherine and Sophia and Dan and all of them, they just haven't seen the documents that we've seen. So if they saw those, then they would understand. Or we would get people that were telling me that I have seen these documents. They would accuse me of seeing things that I knew David Crowley is guilty and I'm just hiding it and everything.
Like, oh, that's right. They did that. They did that a lot too.
Yeah.
You're like going, it's in the book. Everything I have is right here in the book.
It's all there. And
Yeah,
then all this stuff that they accused me of having later on, like the Day One Journal, you read it, and there's nothing in there that would lead anyone to think David Crowley did it. Not any rational, reasonable person. Someone who's grasping for straws, maybe,
he
but
never once talked ill of his wife. Yeah, he struggled with being a father, but I know a lot of men that struggle with being a father. But the whole point is that before, right after summer ended, or just before, somewhere around the end of summer, is where he writes, he's like, I finally connected with her. Things are so good with Rania. And it's like, that doesn't sound like a man who's going to turn around and do all this stuff.
right.
Not at all. Uh, I don't know. It's
Yeah,
so
that's
crazy.
strange.
And then there was something else I was going to talk. Oh, it was like in my brain and left. I hate that. It's like, oh, jeepers. So many things start, running through there and I lose it. But, oh, darn it. It's got to come back.
It will. I mean, there was so much that wasn't left, that wasn't in this book, and then there was so much that came out after it that, again, it's like, how could anyone think that any of this proves that David Crowley did it? You can think whatever you want, you can believe whatever you want, but it's not based on the facts. The
Yeah,
facts are
no,
not going to lead you to think, okay, David did it. Not going to
yeah,
happen.
not one piece of the evidence, and especially what you're showing in here. And again, we have read all of the documents. I've read them all multiple times, and not one piece of evidence points to any even questionable proof that David did this to his family. Now, if it did, I would have no problem saying, man, this man is guilty. Get over it. Here's why. Here's what happened. But nothing, I mean, zero. There's nothing that shows that he did this, but yet everything that points to somebody who either knew them or had a vendetta against them took this out on the entire family, not just him, but they took out his wife and child.
It's brutal. It's
And
brutal.
the police are okay with that. They're okay with going, oh, yeah, he did it. Case closed. We can walk out of here now. We don't have to do any extra work. And that's where I have the biggest problem.
Yeah, it's very, very sad. It's such a strange case, such a very sad case, and I'd never seen any case like this ever.
Yeah, no. And I mean, I have been looking and investigating and crime since, oh my goodness, way back, like in the early 1990s is when I really started doing it. And when like right around 1996, I think was when the internet started to become popular. And way back then, you could actually join a bunch of groups. And I still remember I joined this one group. They were like people who specialized in, they were either FBI, police officers, psychologists, and, but people like me, because I had been investigating and I had a background, I could join their groups too. So, I mean, this is not anything new for me, which is why I commend you for writing a book. I've started one. I can't do it. And it's only because my feelings get in the way really, really fast. And I mean, I have lots of anger toward all of those. I mean, everybody. Because of the lies that are perpetuated, the fact that we have this proof, we bring this proof to them. We show them in their own reports what they said is wrong.
Right.
And wrong in the sense that here's what you wrote, but here's what your conclusion said. And guess what? They don't match. And they're like, we're satisfied. We're happy with our outcome.
Yeah. Yeah. They have no intention. And they made that very clear back in 2015 that there was nothing that was going to change their mind. And at that point, it was also, pretty evident that, okay, somebody's got to stand up for this guy, or even if we're not, I never really felt like I was standing up for David Crowley. It was just showing like, this is what the truth is, guys.
Yeah.
It's not what they're telling you. And I got so sick of every news article that I would read, all had the same thing and all left probably 99% of what's in this book. They left it all out, and they had the same data that we had. They could have easily put some of the stuff in there, and they did not.
I remembered what I was going to say. Yeah, thanks. You jolted my brain. Going back to the evidence and what was written, and I remember because you brought up Tony Floyd, and that's what made it snap in my head.
Hmm.
Is at the very like maybe about a couple of years into myself looking into this case and doing videos. We've all, just so that you guys know, Greg, Dan, myself, and I don't know, maybe even Sophia, but those of us who have really been researching this case, who have researched this case deeply, we're generally contacted by people and they're very stealth and don't want anybody to know who they are. Well, that's what happened with me. And at the beginning, they're like, hey, look at the metadata. And I'm like, and I didn't have time to do it for a while. And they kept, nagging me. Have you done it yet? Look at this. Look at this. Check out the metadata. So I finally started pulling up because in the programs that I have, because I used to do photography. So I have Lightroom and I have Paint Shop Pro. I have all these programs so I can go in and then look at metadata and see what's written in there. And the metadata is wrong. The metadata has been altered.
Mm.
That's no. That's huge no. Why would they need to change a photograph, alter any lighting, alter anything? You don't. You
Mm-mm.
snap that picture, you leave it as is, and you put it on. But yeah, the metadata was incorrect, and some of these photos had been altered. And I don't know how much they were altered. I could only see that they had been altered. Maybe it was lighting, maybe it was positioning, I don't know, but that doesn't matter. The fact is that someone went in and changed the metadata on the photos, and that is done purposefully, and you have to go into a program and retype things. So this isn't just a simple oops, that's a mistake. Like Greg was saying, it's like, so much effort was put into leading people down a certain path. And they didn't seem to understand that what they did could be followed. We
Yeah.
followed their tracks.
Yeah, yeah, and in many cases they got caught in lies. A lot of people did a lot of lies, and then a lot of things that they just tried to not even talk about. Like someone had somehow, I didn't even think about asking about the dog feces. Did they test the dog feces? I didn't think about asking that until it was brought up by somebody in the group, probably like at the very end, as I was finishing up this book. It took them a year to answer that, and I don't even know if I put that in the book because this was all during COVID. So I don't even think that I had that clear answer yet, and I was not going to put anything in the book that I could not really back up or that I did not feel like I had a answer for it. And it wasn't that, and that's why there's a lot of stuff that was left out. And I think that that disappointed some people too, because they had been telling me things and there were things that they wanted in the book. I felt like there were people, like you say, contacting us privately that were trying to mislead me, that were trying to steer me down a certain path, that wanted me to look at their evidence and go with it. And what I find is if you push back on those people and push back hard early on, if they're real, they'll stick with you. If they're not, they're going to get angry and they're going to join a group that is built to be your fan club. Pretty much, you find that. So, and then you get accused, well, you're me. I thought you were a Christian. I thought you were this. Like, well, yeah, you guys are testing me, I'm testing you too. I never said that to them, but you know I'm sure that at some point they had to have realized that you're fishing for information from me. Well, guess what? I'm also fishing too, because I need to know if you are a real person, and if you are, then you're not going to get mad at me when I disagree with you on this stuff. And more so than not, a lot of people did. A lot of people did get mad, and they accused me of things, like I said, of hiding things, and they would go ask people, and they would just start following them because they didn't like me. They didn't like my views on Trump. They didn't like how I felt about gays. They didn't like how I felt about Jesus. So they would look for things, or they would purposely, they couldn't separate those views from this case. And
Yeah. And that's so true, because back then, especially when the thing happened, because of my stance on it, and I just have a whole different, I have a different viewpoint on it because I come from a different background. And because I was verbal about that, and I was at odds with someone who was a little bit bigger on YouTube at that time, I lost over half, well over like 2/3 of my subscribers. As soon as they came to my channel and said something very rude to me because of what I said, on one of my videos, I mean, they just left. And I'm
Mm.
like, okay, you're gonna leave. I thought you guys were here to support David Crowley. And if you don't agree with what I say about that situation, that's fine. I'm not asking you to, but you're supposed to be supporting him. But they didn't care. It's like people just in, out, in, out. And it's like, wow, okay, I guess we know where you really were at the time.
Right.
But I know you had started a second book on this case, and you had a whole bunch of people dropping chapters. Now, is that something that you plan on finishing, just because it was covering a lot of other information, or are you just going to let that go by the wayside for a bit? Because I want other people to. I want to know if we have something else to look forward to, because this is so good.
Yeah, I'm still kind of 50-50 on it. I feel like I probably have enough for a second book on my own. I've always wanted to write that book where you get 5 to 10 people and everybody writes their own chapter. I think it's a great idea. It's something I would still love to be part of. I don't know if I would want to take lead on it. I think that would be my only thing. It's a lot of work to make sure that everybody gets their chapters done, that everything is solid. There's no slander or anything like that. So I think that would be my only hesitation now. Is I'd love to be a part of it. I just don't know if I have the time, really, just with family stuff and with everything else. I don't know if I have the time to really take the lead to make sure that it gets done properly.
Well, okay. I mean, there are editors out there. Well, I only know because I know some of the stuff that was in there. Um, I don't think you give yourself enough credit, Greg. I thought what you were doing and what I saw before was very good. And if you need somebody to come in and check to see if there's, if it's not sticking to facts and it starts, going down an emotional pathway, I mean, I'll help you out. There are also editors, we can work on getting editors for the book, which would be a completely outside source,
That's true.
who could look for that. But, it's just because I know I read some of the stuff that you have written in there, and I don't know, it just seems like I think people would get a lot out of that book,
Yeah,
because you cover a lot of stuff, again, that you either didn't have access to, or for whatever reason could not be included in this one, so you were putting it in the second one. So I hope one day soon you you get that
well,
finished, because it was good, and I'm just like, okay, please finish it.
well, thank you for that. I definitely appreciate that. I felt like, yeah, some of the stuff that I was writing, it kind of gets into it. I felt like it was taken away from the case almost. I didn't want to make the book about me. And again, it goes back because these people contacted me. And so how do you do that? You have to make it about you because you're writing about what these people said about you, or what the conversation, the things that they've told you. So I don't know. I'm still like I said, I'm still 50-50 on it. I'm not closing the door, but I would rather see somebody take what we have so far and take lead on it.
Okay, because here's why I think it's important that you include information like that. Not because necessarily it has anything to do with the case per se. However, it lets the reader know the hell we have gone through fighting for justice for this man and his family.
Yeah.
And that is what shows really what we have been put through the ringer, all of us. And it's like, people need to understand what it is and despite that, we still fight for the justice, not for David, but for the justice. It's just, it happens to be his name attached to it.
Yeah.
Because I don't care if his name was Joe Blow from Timbuktu, I would still have gone with it. And I believe you would have too, with the same type of gusto. Look what they did to this person. This isn't right.
Yeah. Yeah. It was so clear. It's such a slam dunk case. And that was one of my biggest beefs with some of these alternative media people that I was already kind of on the outs with, already kind of like, oh, okay, you know what? Instead of listening to what they say and then going to research what they say, I'm just going to kind of steer clear from them and see what happens. And God showed me pretty quickly that a lot of the people that I was following are not who I thought that they were. They're not the researchers that I thought that they were. Their motivations are not what I thought that they were. That doesn't mean that I'm right, but that's what I believe, and that's what I truly think about a lot of these people that were a part of the quote unquote truth movement are not real. They're not real people who really care about doing the research and getting involved and trying to get justice. They act like they are, and they act like they want truth, but they're doing shows. Their motivation is different. It's a different thing. I don't have a weekly show. I don't have money coming in from those shows. I work 9 to 5 at a regular job and then do this stuff on my own time. I'm not willing to risk any of that to put myself in the spot where these people can be compromised. And I believe that some of them are, because they have to make a living. They have to walk this fine line. They have to be careful about what they say, what their sponsors want, and all of that stuff. So it was very eye opening to me to really see that a lot of the people back in the early 2000s, after 9/11, after the Iraq War, really, after I started learning about there's something really odd here. Around 2004, 2005, all the people that I was following, or a lot of them, are the same people that were involved with this project at some time, or David has actually spoken to them and are in David Crowley's the documentary film. A lot of them are in there, and I
Yeah.
see it. I see them totally different now than what I did way back then.
Yeah, and every single person that I could find that was involved with either the Gray State or with David or anybody, and I mean everybody I could find, without exception, have never returned an email or a phone call from me.
Mm.
Not one person. And I would give them, I'm like, hey, this is who I am. This is what I've been doing. I would like to know if you would like to talk about David Crowley. You said this on this episode, blah, 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 blah. Here's my channel. You can see what I'm doing. I'm not some stupid troll. And, when you have over 100 videos, it's kind of like, okay, maybe the person, is really looking into it. Nobody responded. I can't even get the police to respond to an FOIA request. So I'm like, wow. And that opened my eyes a lot. A lot.
Yeah, yeah, and that's the sad truth of it. But at least it showed us who some of these people are, what they're really like, and it was sad to learn some of that. Some of that I kind of understood. Some of their personalities I gravitated towards them because I had the same type of a personality, at least at that point, or I wanted to have the personality that they had. I wanted to be as brave as I thought they were being. But when they all shut up about David Crowley, I started asking myself, how brave are these people?
Right.
What do they really care? If they don't care about this slam dunk case that is not going to hurt them to talk about it, why aren't they talking about it? And it
Yeah.
changed my view on a lot of people.
Unfortunately, I,
No.
I know Greg's like, I wasn't. I mean, I was, because some of the people I really thought would respond. And yeah, I mean, there was nothing at all. Although I do have to say that even though one of the people who did not respond to me, they did respond to you, and we all did a video together. So that I was grateful for. I'm like, okay, so he ignored me, but at least he ignored my request to him, but we did get together and do a video. So then it's like, okay, so maybe I shouldn't say 100. Well, I don't know. Take it as you will. Is that 100% or not? But
Yeah.
they at least did come forward and say, no, that I know this man. I was with him, and that's not who he is.
Mm.
But in closing, because I know you have a family and you're not feeling well, is there anything else you want to say final about your book? Other than, I mean, you guys, it's a fantastic book. And Greg does often give these out for free, but I'm telling you, buy it. It is worth the money. That's my take. I'm an author as well, but he deserves the money for the research he put into this. Any last words?
The book did really, really well. I didn't expect to really sell any copies, just to friends, just to people who just want to have that or who want to support what I'm doing, what we're all doing. But the response was overwhelmingly positive. It's very rare that I get anyone. I mean, I may get people that criticize me or a video or something like that, but not the book, really. Even some of the people that don't like me, I've heard some positive. They've said some positive things about the book. I think one even said that, well, take this as a negative or a positive. I don't know, but it's pretty much he just took all this stuff and did like a copy paste. And it's like, yeah, that's kind of what I did. All I did was I was put what is out there and put it into one book here. So like there's no creativity because all he did was just take the information.
Well, that's what
Yeah.
you were telling him. That was the purpose of the book. And it's not all copy paste, but however, you do include a lot of the documents and you show the photographs of the documents. And that, my dear friends, is not a bad thing because it's the proof right up front. And again, for those who want to know, it's called The Gray Stage, based on The Gray State by David Crowley, and it's by Greg Fernandez Jr. And I will put a link underneath the video where you guys will be able to get this book, and please buy it. It's well worth it, especially if you like true crime and you like the facts and not just somebody's storied fantasy. When I compare, okay, I read the book Evil Intentions based on, two murders out of Arizona, and it was nothing but fabricated fantasy ideology by the author. It was horrible. And the reason why I know that is because I interviewed these criminals and I read all of the case documents I could get my hands on from the police and from the inmates themselves. It didn't even match up. But with this, I love this book because of the fact that you include, not only do you put in copies of the actual documents, but then you also list them in the back where you got the information from and then where people can get it from.
Yeah.
I mean, and you have that on your website as well.
Yeah, they can download it. They can download it free too if you just want to get a PDF version and download it. And if you're like me, you can't read digital books, you can just print it out, go to your library, go somewhere, you can print it out for probably a couple dollars, hopefully. But or else it is out there. The only other thing that I really want to do one day with this book is do a hardcover copy. I think that's probably the next step, but that may be another year or so out because of the book that I'm writing now. That book, there's no way that's going to be done until next summer, just because we don't know what's going to happen in 2024. So at the end of November, so, and then, but I'm not done with this case. We know Catherine isn't. We know that, a lot of people aren't. So I don't know if you want to call it that I'm taking a break or that I just am really focused on this other book that I'm writing now, but definitely not completely done with this case. And if new information comes out, as more information does come out, which I believe that it will, we'll still be here to cover it. I'm not on Facebook. Has nothing to do with the David Crowley case. One of the only reasons why I was still on Facebook was because of the David Crowley case. But I'm not on Facebook, and I don't know if I plan on coming back to Facebook, unfortunately.
Oh,
But I
I
am
don't
on
blame
YouTube.
you.
You'll find me on YouTube.
Yeah, I mean, that's the only reason I came back to Facebook was because of the David Crowley case. I'd been off for many years and I loved it. And
Yeah, it was
yeah,
great.
I don't blame you.
Although
But
I found myself on TikTok, but again, not with anything with me. You're not going to find me dancing half naked on TikTok or anything like that. It is strictly just to talk about Kennedy and Trump, and all I do is just post clips of them. That's it. But anything that I do where it's just something like this will be right here on Facebook on the Greg Fernandez Jr. Channel, or we'll get back to the Gray States channel too. And of course, if I get banned, because I have two Greg Fernandez Jr. channels out there, so hopefully I don't lose this one that I already have two strikes on. But
I know, hopefully you stick around. But just so you guys know, in the very near future, though, Greg will be back and we will talk about his second book, which is What is Truth? It's the 9/11 story, which is also another excellent book. He says it's dry and everything,
it's
but
a little
again, it's information. Yes, show that.
it's a
It's
little dry, but yeah,
no,
it's
no,
okay.
it's got a lot of really good information in that as well. So we will cover that in the near future. And then also after that, I plan on bringing him back in for a third time, and we will discuss the books that he was just discussing, the one he's working on now about what's happening in the world today. But thank you so much, Greg. Is there anything else you want to say in closing?
No, that's it. Thank you very much for having me on.
Thank you, everybody. Thank you, Greg.
All right, bye now.
Greg was supposed to be going live today about 3 hours ago, and we were going to cover item number 57. I don't know how many people were supposed to show, but I have heard nothing from him, and he didn't respond to my emails to find out if we were going to. So I'm going to assume it's been canceled. So I just figured I'd jump on really fast just to reiterate and do, I don't know, like a refresher on item number 57, and we'll just make it, super fast. Let's see. And I just need to share my screen. And okay, so hopefully you guys are seeing, this is the report, the large one, the 485-page report. And this is where I think, what page was this? Page 465. If you go to the 485-page report, this will be page 465. And this is talking about item number 57. And again, that was the bullet fragment that was found in the ceiling. And it says that blood was not detected on item 57. So they have item number 57, this was the one that was found a month later in February. And they couldn't detect blood, but they went ahead and took a swab and took a sample and then marked that sample as 57-1. And again, you can see where they have DNA profiling was performed on blood previously indicated on areas, blah, 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 which has nothing to do with item number 57. And then the DNA profiling was performed on item 38, sample collected from item 45, item 57-1, and on the known DNA samples of David Timothy Crowley, Kamel Crowley, and was previously performed on the known DNA sample of Rania Crowley. So I don't know where they got the DNA, but they did. And so they compared all of those blood samples with the DNA found on various items. And again, there was no blood on item number 57. So let me get this again. Let's see. I'm trying to see where it's it tells me I can stop sharing a video. Okay. Oh, share. There we go. Stop screen sharing. But anyway, and I know in the past we have had some issues with certain people who have wanted to say that because they took a sample from item 57 that, yeah, see, there was blood, when it clearly states before no blood detected on item 57, but then they still swabbed it, and that swab became 57-1. And when they did a testing on the swab to see if they could come up with anything, now it was very, very tiny sample of DNA that they found on that. So to me, I'm guessing, could be wrong, to me it makes perfect sense that that would be DNA left behind as you're loading your magazine, you know, because where else are they going to get it from? I highly doubt he spit on it, right, or rubbed it under his armpits or something. But still, so there are zero bullets and 0 bullet fragments that have David's blood on them. And to remember too, so he's facing this way. The trajectory was from left to right, but the bullet trajectory was like from the feet to the head. Totally opposite directions. Again, it makes zero sense that that would be the bullet that killed him. And in fact, the bullet that did kill him is not there. It's not in the house. And since his blood is not there, the bullet is not there, and he died first because, as we know, he has marked autolysis. In the other girls, they have just autolysis. Marked meaning more advanced. Did he even die in the house? We don't know. I doubt it, though. But anyway, I'm hoping that Greg will reschedule and we can all get together and then do another discussion on this topic. But if you have any questions, then please feel free to ask. But I think I'm just going to do some more like little short videos like this just to recap on certain areas of the case that we have discussed previously. But it'll just be a shorter version, easier to watch. So I hope you guys are all having a great day, and we will see you next time. Okay, hi YouTube. Back for just a really quick video. Like I said, I wanted to start doing a bunch of just short, real quick videos just to go over the different aspects of the case. And today we're going to go back and revisit the bullets. So here, this is what we're going to talk about today. Just again, real quick, this is just a review. I've done longer videos where we've gone in depth over this. Over here is the item number. These are all of the bullets, the cartridge, and then the fragment that was found at the crime scene. The item number, the description, the weight after firing, the difference in that weight, where it was located, the condition of the bullet and that was found, or the fragment, what was located on these bullets, whose blood was found on it, who was absolutely excluded, or was there a mixture, etc. And now to go over this real quick, we have number 7 is the cartridge. I need to change that from unspent bullet to cartridge. So we have the cartridge is item number 7. The fragment is item number 31. Now here's where we get to the bullets. Number 42, 43, and 44. All of those, when you look at the photos, that they all belong to Kamel. Let's see. They were all found in the living room. And the condition of those was, we're going with Kamel's right here. So let's go here with 7. 789, line 789. It was expanded and damaged, partially expanded, and nothing noted but says damaged. On number 42, it says blood-like and hair-like substance. Number 43, apparent blood-like. And number 44, blood-like. Was there blood found? Yes. To whom did it belong? Kamel. Number 42 and 43 indicated as female. Number 44, only single source. So, of course. And then again, doesn't match David or Rania, and David and or Rania can be excluded. Now let's go to 45 was the bullet that was found in the downstairs basement wall. Of course, so it was shot through the floor and it went into the wall. So there's no DNA on that one. Now number 53, that is the one that was found like the next day. And so the full weight of that one should have been 180 grains. It was measured out at 169.54 grains, so it was missing 10.46. And it was found in the living room. Nothing is noted about the condition. It just says it's damaged. Now, the only thing that they could find on it that they could see was white material, but then they also says one small area had blood. So yes, it did indicate for blood, and that one was Rania's, well, had Rania's blood on it. Now, I don't believe this is the bullet that killed Rania. The mixture of the blood found on that was a mixture of 2 or more. Now, the people excluded were both David and Kamel. So we have a mixture of 2 or more individuals on item number 53. David and Kamel are excluded, but it did test positive for Rania's. But again, keep in mind that this was the bullet that was found when they were rolling up the rug. So this thing was tumbling through the rug as it's being rolled, and it rolled out onto the floor. So it is highly probable, and a halfway decent attorney or even, a forensic person could argue that that picked up DNA as it rolled on the rug. But we'll never know. It's about the only thing we can presume, because of how it was found. So it had keep in mind, it had a very small, little tiny spot of blood on it. There was no hair, no tissue, nothing else associated with it. So when you compare that with what the bullets look like that were the ones that went through Kamel, I don't want to just sound rude and crude, but the ones that killed Kamel, those are obvious. You see hair mixed in, you see all kinds of stuff. But this one, item number 53, it's clean, it's shiny brass. It didn't even oxidize. Now, number 57, here we go. This is the one that had David's DNA. This bullet, this was the one that was found a month later up in the attic. Now, when you look at the different weights of these, look at the weights after they were fired through a weapon. I don't even know if it was the gun that was found at the scene. There's arguments against that, although some of the reports say that it was. Again, quickly for those who don't know, the reports state that when they did a test fire on that weapon, they had poor reproducibility. In other words, they couldn't get the thing to fire and show the same pattern, so in a consistent manner. So again, I have questions. Maybe nobody else does, and maybe the police can explain it, but they have a lot more explaining to do, to help us understand. And I'm not trying to sound arrogant. It's just that from what I see, it just doesn't make sense. So, okay, number 57. Now remember, these cartridges weighed 180 grains, and I showed you a picture of the box. Now this one, when they weighed it, it was 180.18 grains, and this is the one that was found in the attic. So it didn't go through anybody or anything other than a ceiling. It was only partially expanded. No blood found on this bullet at all, and they only found white material. So when they what they did is then they swabbed it. They couldn't, because they swab something, they pour the little fluid on it, and does blood indicate, and none of that worked. There was no blood. So then they swab it, they take that swab, they send it off to the lab, and then the lab found such a small portion of DNA that they had to keep replicating it thousands of times in order to get enough DNA to say that that profile then matched David. Okay, if a bullet is going to go through somebody, it's going to be more than just this little teeny minute amount. So another thing to keep in mind, and this fragment, when you look at this fragment, it only weighed 19.14 grains. And when you're looking at the other bullets found there, it could have easily gone with number 44. It could have belonged to one of these others, or another bullet that was just never found, or it was picked up, or whatever. But taking out that fragment, because again, it's just a small piece, David loaded his magazines with 11 rounds. Now, there were 2 rounds in the magazine and 1 in the chamber of the gun. So that's 3. Then let's count the rest of them. That's 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. We're missing a bullet. So not only is a bullet missing from this magazine, but we have the bullet that killed Rania that's not there, and the bullet that killed David that is not there. Again, when you're going through these reports and you look at all of the labs that were done, there just was not enough blood found. They had to replicate and keep replicating David's and Rania's DNA that they found on these items thousands of times just to get enough to get the sequence that they could say who it belonged to. They didn't have that problem with Kamel's. So there we go. Just wanted to go over that really quick. So let me, again, I always have a hard time finding out where to turn off the sharing. Yeah, so frustrating. But there we have it. So we're going to stop it here and, think about that. You can find these reports in multiple places. You can go to Greg's website. I think it's called a Gray Stage. But yeah, there we have it, folks. We got the bullets covered really quick, and next time maybe we'll cover more of the blood. So you guys have a good day.
This is about the Madeline Soto case, but I've been thinking a lot about this, and something's not sitting right. So I don't know if I've missed some information or if you guys have an opinion as well. This is about little 13-year-old girl who had been reported missing by the mother. And of course she had a boyfriend that wasn't the father living with her. Now I am not, saying that women should not ever have, another date or anything, but for crying out loud, this is happening a lot. But anyway, the mother goes and is being interviewed by Fox News. Fox then, and I think it was a local Fox station. Don't know. I'll put the link down below. I'm sure I can find it. But right away, she's like, we took her here. We dropped her off at the church. We. And then when the police get a hold of Stephen Stearns' phone, they find out that the little girl was already gone at that point in time. And, the sick MFer took pictures and videos and everything. But why haven't the police arrested the mother? She is saying she lied. She went on national TV and lied. And this was her daughter that was missing, a 13-year-old little girl who had been hurt by this freak of nature on multiple occasions. Okay, police, what do you know that we don't? I'm usually on you guys' side, usually. Of course, you probably don't know that with the David Crowley case. However, this is not okay. This woman needs to be questioned. What What do you guys think?
Okay, hi everyone. This is just going to be a brief, I'm still here, don't go anywhere kind of video. I do still plan on, I think I'm going to go live sometime this next coming week. If not this week, it'll be the weekend. And the reason why I'm not really sure is I have so many things on my plate right now. Some of you guys know, but probably a lot of you don't, is that in my spare time, which happens to be a lot, but I do a lot of writing, and I have been working really hard on finishing a book I started many years ago. But we're on, it's in the final stages, right? It's actually had to, well, didn't have to, but it's part of what you do. You hire an editor, a professional editor. So we're in the process of editing the book, and so I'm finalizing it as it goes. So hopefully it'll be done by the end of the year. Keeping fingers crossed. But yeah, and it's not on the case. I do have one traditionally published book, and that was just, it was put out so long ago. I mean, a long time ago, 2000, 2001. I don't even know if it can even be purchased still. But anyway, so a lot of things happened between then and now. But anyway, I finally had started this one book, like, I don't know, 2008, maybe 2009. It's been a long time, 2010. It was started a long time ago. Anyway, it's now almost done. So it's taken a lot, and I mean a lot of my time to finish that up. And in between times, and I have not stopped looking at the case. I know, I don't think anybody's covering it anymore, including myself. You know, I didn't stop researching it, but I wasn't, you know, clearly haven't been doing as many videos. But what I do want to cover next time is there are, let's see if I can find them now. I have it here. But there's an instance, like say, just if for those of you who have the reports, if you find the 488-page document, and you'll find that under Greg's, under his website, I think it's a Gray Stage. You know, you can go to Greg Fernandez Jr. on YouTube, and I've listed his page many times. But anyway, on the 488-page document, you know, when the police first show up, right, to the scene, this is the crime scene response information is what this one's called, page 141 of 488. And it says briefing notes, 1/17/2015, 12:56. 2 squads from AVPD respond to scene, male, female, small school-age child. And then they write, 3, because they talk to neighbors, right? 3 gunshots heard, 3 gunshots, sorry, 3 gunshots neighbor heard between December 2nd and December 19th, sometime around 1 a.m., 3 deceased in living room of house. And this is supposed to be like, oh, that's it, you know, oh my God, those were the shots that killed the family. No. Between the 2nd and the 19th, the family was quote-unquote last seen around the 19th, later in December. We have the school giving a statement where David and Kamel both picked up Rania on the 19th. So if this is at 1 o'clock in the morning, this would be 1 a.m. on the 19th, and the latest time that these shots were heard, right? And this is what I'm saying. This is what's so frustrating with this case. So they write this down, and they put 3 bodies. There were 3 shots heard, and then we have our narrative. The timeline doesn't match. This was the time frame between December 2nd and December 19th, and they clearly are seen 1 o'clock in the morning on December 19th. They're clearly seen at 3 or 3:30 on the 19th. So why they had to write this down and make it part of their narrative boggles my mind. But anyway, it's a bunch of stuff like this. I'm going to go back over again. which we'll be covering in the live. But also, I want to start, covering different stories as well. And that's why I'm starting to call this What Say You? So what do you guys have to say about these things, that not only with the Crowley case, but with these other cases that we find? And then I also am going to try to start doing some interviews with, there are a lot of YouTubers that have their channels based on books that they read. So they kind of will read a story and then they come back and talk about it. In the midst of life, I've done a lot of, reading and listening to audiobooks. I'm doing both. And I'm listening to a series now. It's a 7-book series. I'm on book 6 of the 7, and it's written by Scarlett St. Clair. Now, I am not a romance person. But these series, to me, it's about Hades and Persephone, the love story, which is really bizarre because I'm still trying to wrap my head around this, because in some part of Greek mythology, they say they don't know who Persephone's father is, and in other parts of Greek mythology, they're saying that Persephone's father is Zeus. Well, Zeus is Hades' brother, so it's his niece, but this major love story. Anyway, in my brain, I don't see them as uncle and niece, because that's just disgusting. But the way this writer writes it is that her father's never mentioned, and her father's not Zeus. At least I think that's how it's covered. But anyway, yeah, Greek mythology. Oh my, these people are twisted. But anyway, it's actually, so it's quite interesting. So I would like to start getting other YouTubers on who read books and then discuss them. Basically because, writing, what you guys, I don't know, maybe you know it, maybe you don't know it, but it's part of who I am and what I do. I've been writing my whole life. Poetry, writing books, writing stories. Basically the arts have always been a part of who I am. I've had one piece of my art on display at the Minnesota Institute of Art. I've put out an album, I've written books. I just love creating anything creative. And so it's super interesting when I go to these other YouTube channels and I listen to how people read and then how they take things in and how they interpret. To me, it's fascinating. I love to see how people think and process, the same things that I do, because I'll read some things and I'll agree with what they say, and then other times it's like, wait a minute, I didn't get that at all. But anyway, so I kind of want to expand the channel a little bit more, because it seems like the David Crowley case, it's fallen on deaf ears when it comes to the police. They don't care. Nobody gives one iota. And now that no one else is really covering the case, it's like, dead in the water, which is kind of where I've always said it was going to be. I never saw this going anywhere because there aren't enough people willing to stand up and say, hey, you're going to hear us. Our voices need to be heard. This man needs to be, justified. He didn't kill his family. I don't care what anybody says. I've been researching this now since 2017. Yeah, almost 7 years. I've read everything that has been released. We've, thousands of pages of documents on this case. And I've seen the proof. And the moment the autopsy reports state that his decomp is marked and the other two are not, it was dead in the water for me. It was proof. That's final proof for me. It should be proof for everybody. That just means his decomp is further along. So how could he kill his family if he was dead first? So anyway, but yeah, it's since nobody else is really doing anything anymore in the case, I just figured maybe I'll expand the channel and, put some feelers out there and see what works and what doesn't. But anyway, that's what you can expect going forward. If there are any other stories that you guys want to, discuss or hear talked about, and I'm willing. I've got time to do research. A lot of times, I just kind of hear anyway, and I don't mind. I don't mind digging and reading. So if there's a case you guys want to talk about or you want to hear about, let me know. anyway, that's where we are, and hopefully that this new direction will lead us into some pretty interesting things. So until I get the rest of the stuff put together on the Crowley case, again, I found something else. I've read these things so many times, and I get so frustrated with myself that I don't catch these on the first 150th time I've read them. It takes 151 times before it's like, ding, hello, what's that? And that's happened with another thing. It has to do with bodies, oh my gosh, see, no brain power. Camel's body position in her hands. I think you guys will find that interesting too, which I will cover the next time we go live here pretty soon. But again, keep in mind, the police wrote up the report to make it sound like, aha, see, the neighbor heard 3 gunshots. We have 3 people dead in the house. Case closed. Build everything around to fit this narrative. But it's too late. The neighbor gave the dates of the 2nd through the 19th, written in the police's report. At 1 o'clock in the morning, David, Camille, and Rania were seen on the 19th during the day. The school verifies that David and Camille picked up Rania at 3 o'clock in the afternoon. So that whole, neighbor heard 3 gunshot thing. Again, it's tossed out. It doesn't even matter. Has no bearing on the case whatsoever. But anyway, okay, hope you guys are doing well, and we'll talk to you later.